Hi, my name's Karen Davies, and this is the Karen Davies Podcast, episode 24. I recently saw a video of a man telling a story about a woman who went to a seminar, and at the time, the woman had cancer, and the seminar leader said to her, "How much responsibility do you want to take?" The woman was outraged and replied, "It's not my fault I've got cancer." The seminar leader clarified, "I didn't ask you about blame. Responsibility is our ability to respond to a situation. So, how much responsibility do you want to take?" The woman replied, "I want 100% responsibility." The man telling the story goes on to say that the number one hallmark of self-degrading behaviour is blaming others for the problems in your life. Let me say that again. Choosing to blame others as a response to a situation means that you're degrading yourself. You see, when we continuously blame others, it can reinforce a negative self-image. It suggests that we view ourselves as a victim rather than someone who is in control of their life and who has the ability and the power to make changes. Blaming others can serve as a way to avoid facing uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our actions. It can be a form of escapism that hinders personal development. So, if you constantly hear yourself saying things like, "It's not my fault," then you may be suffering a lack of personal responsibility, also known as blaming others. By doing this, you're distancing yourself from your problems, allowing yourself to play the victim, and worst of all, keeping yourself stuck. Responsibility requires us to meet our obligations and fulfill our duties. At some point in our lives, we all engage in blame, especially when faced with challenging situations. However, if blaming others becomes a chronic pattern in our behaviour and negatively impacts our life, then that needs to change, or we're destined to keep repeating the same mistakes and giving away our power. Taking responsibility for our actions and choices is a powerful and crucial step towards personal growth and well-being. To use a well-known quote, "Your life right now is the result of what you did a year ago. Your life a year from now will be the result of what you do right now. So act accordingly." Radical responsibility means understanding that we ourselves are both the cause and control of our lives, not external events. Instead of asking who's to blame, ask what can I learn from this and how can I grow? But don't take my word for it. In his exceptional book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor E. Frankl explores the importance of finding meaning and purpose in life and taking responsibility, especially in the face of suffering. And he's a man that certainly knows about suffering. Frankl was an Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist. During World War II, he found himself, together with his wife and parents, in Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz. Frankl was the only Holocaust survivor of his entire family. His experiences in these harrowing conditions led to him refining his ideas on the importance of finding purpose and meaning even in the darkest of circumstances. After surviving the Holocaust, Frankl dedicated his life to promoting the idea that individuals have the freedom to take full responsibility and choose their attitudes and responses to life's challenges, all of which was documented in his book, where he touches upon the concept of personal responsibility in the context of finding meaning. Frankl goes on to say, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. In his quote, Frankl emphasises our responsibility and freedom to choose our attitude, even in the most challenging and dire of circumstances. Imagine seeing your wife, parents and friends murdered and still being able to choose your attitude in response to that. It's an incredible feat of consciousness and self-awareness. Throughout the book, Frankl underscores the idea that individuals have the responsibility to determine their responses to life circumstances and that they can choose their own response to any conditions. He also encourages people to take responsibility for their actions by reflecting on how they would have acted differently in the past and then applying those lessons to their present decisions. Man's Search for Meaning emphasises the idea that in the most challenging situations, individuals have the responsibility and the freedom to choose their attitudes, responses and actions, ultimately shaping their own lives and finding meaning in the process. While the idea of personal responsibility may seem daunting to some, it's important to recognise that it's not about shouldering the burdens of the world, but rather it's about taking charge of your own destiny and embracing the opportunities for self-improvement. Remember, we're not allocating blame here, and we're not saying that bad things don't happen, but we are giving ourselves the power and the freedom to choose how we respond. Taking responsibility is key to self-empowerment. When we accept that we have control over our choices and actions, we free ourselves from being the victim. Instead of blaming external circumstances for challenges, we acknowledge that we have the power to shape our future. This realisation is incredibly liberating and can lead to a greater sense of confidence and self-worth. Taking responsibility also gives us added sense of control over our lives and choices, and it can contribute significantly to our overall well-being. Studies have shown that individuals who take personal responsibility for their actions tend to experience lower stress levels and better mental health. This is because they have a greater sense of autonomy and they're better equipped to cope with life's challenges. Your commitment to personal responsibility doesn't go unnoticed by those around you. Your actions can serve as inspiration to friends, family, and colleagues. When others witness your determination, resilience, and accountability, they're more likely to adopt these traits themselves. By leading by example, you can create a ripple effect of positive change. At this point, I could give you some examples of people such as myself who've taken responsibility for things like recovering from multiple job redundancies or taking responsibility for their health after an operation or an illness. After all, there are many real-life examples of people taking responsibility, but I really want to get a little bit deeper on this and mention a few people who you may well recognise. The first one is Nelson Mandela. The former lawyer and South African president took responsibility for his nation's reconciliation and healing after the end of apartheid. Instead of seeking vengeance against his oppressors who kept him in prison for 27 years for his involvement in anti-apartheid activities, Mandela advocated for reconciliation and unity, setting a powerful example of personal responsibility for peace and justice. Imagine being locked up away from your wife and family for nearly 3 decades, kept in inhumane conditions, forced to do hard physical labour, and all because you were outspoken against racial segregation discrimination and oppression. I cannot begin to imagine the strength it took to set those experiences aside in order to seek reconciliation. Another person who knows about taking personal responsibility is Malala Yousafzai, who was just 15 when she survived an assassination attempt by the Taliban. Malala became a global advocate for girls' education. She fearlessly took on the responsibility of being a voice for girls who face discrimination and violence due to their pursuit of education. Imagine being a 15-year-old schoolchild shot in the head by a terrorist organisation and then refusing to do the one thing they want you to do, which is stop being educated. Not only did Malala refuse to stop being educated, but she continues to advocate for education of girls all over the world. Malala's bravery is astounding. Rosa Parks took personal responsibility for challenging racial segregation in the United States. On December 1st, 1955, Miss Parks refused to give up her bus seat to a white passenger in Montgomery, Alabama, sparking the Montgomery bus boycott and playing a pivotal role in the struggle for civil rights. Nowadays, Rosa is seen as a hero and a paragon of the civil rights movement, but many people fail to realise the repercussions that Rosa personally suffered for the seemingly simple yet defiant act of refusing to give up her bus seat. Rosa Parks was arrested and charged with violating the city's segregation laws. She was fined a total of $14, including court fees, which was a huge amount in those days. At the time, Rosa was a seamstress and her monthly wage was just $23. Monthly rent in working class neighbourhoods at the time was between $10 and $20. The fine would have been devastating financially if it hadn't been for a group of civil rights leaders and activists who paid it for her. The story doesn't stop there. Following her arrest, Rosa Parks and her family faced harassment, threats and intimidation from white supremacists and segregationists. They received hate mail and threatening phone calls, and Rosa lost her seamstress job. We're not talking about empty threats or name-calling here. We're talking about real-life threats of murder and assault. This was in the days when the Ku Klux Klan was still actively carrying out murders. Imagine having your life threatened just because of the colour of your skin and for not giving up your bus seat on a bus. While Rosa Parks faced significant personal and social challenges as a result of her actions, her courage and commitment to the cause of civil rights had a lasting and positive impact on the struggle for racial equality in the United States. That's what I call taking radical responsibility. Personal responsibility is not just a virtue. It's not about taking blame or pretending something didn't happen. It's about taking responsibility and choosing how you respond. Responsibility is hugely powerful for achieving our goals, improving our well-being, and building meaningful relationships. You don't have to be a political prisoner, the victim of a bullet to a head, or an awe-inspiring activist. You can take responsibility to empower yourself to take control of your own life, learn from your own experiences, and inspire positive change in others. So, embrace taking responsibility and watch as it transforms your life into a journey of fulfillment and success. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy listening to this podcast, come and check out my website, KarenDaviesCoaching.com. There's plenty of resources, tips and downloads, as well as the opportunity to work with me.